Hello, and welcome to Doing the Work, the podcast for advanced Dr. Joe Dispenza students who are ready to dive deep, dream big, and ride the waves of transformation. We are your hosts, Amanda
and Lorelai, and we are so glad you're with us. This episode is all about introductions, who we are, why we're here, and the vision that sparked this podcast.
Before we jump in, let's take a couple of minutes to slow down, breathe, and connect our hearts. This is an important element for our podcast. As you will notice in all of our episodes, we begin and end with a heart connection. Lorelai, could you guide us in?
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us and giving us your time and your energy. Let us connect into the field as well as in 3D. If it's comfortable for you, please close your eyes and place a hand on your heart, drawing your attention to the center of love, creativity, and friendship. And with every breath out, allow yourself to sink deeper into your body, into your heart, as we connect our energies. I would like to connect with the energy of when I first met Amanda, the retreat. If you have a special friend in the Dr. Joe community, please feel your heart reach to them. And with every breath in and out, feel the buzzing in every cell of your body of having someone in your life that is supportive of your journey, that shares into your energy and holds your hand as you cross the river of change. So much gratitude for the evolution of our lives, for the deep human connection we're sharing, for the unconditional love and the endless joy we bring each other. Let's feel our hearts expand bigger and bigger as I connect my heart to Amanda's, merging into her field, bursting with love and with joy, and expanding this bubble of love to you and your special friends in the community, creating patterns within patterns, being the change we want to see in the world. And with every breath, let us draw in more of this beautiful quantum energy. Draw it into your hearts and up to our throats as we express our intention to be clear and draw in our highest selves. And we draw this energy up behind our eyes, getting ready to see the world through an elevated consciousness and a new perspective. One more big breath as we're getting ready to open our eyes. Thank you all for contributing to this community. We're so grateful for you.
Thank you, Lorelai. That feels so great. I have to say, as you were connecting to our first meeting, I remembered seeing you walk across because we were meeting by the windows. So you were like outside of the dining area, and seeing you walk across the area, and I hadn't ever met you before, and just feeling your strong like force, your energy, and you just had a presence like, I'm here. It was really beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I was welling up when I remembered this. The other day we were recording one of our episodes, and I was saying I just remember it so clearly because that was a special event we had. Well, all of the events are special, to be honest, but
True.
a lot of things happened for us. We actually went to the same first week long in Niagara Falls. We hadn't met there. Now we were at our first AFU in Denver, and it was such a powerful thing. And we met after a lot of things happened in the quantum, and I think our energies were just bubbling and sparkling all around us. And it really got imprinted in my heart and my brain when I first saw you.
Yeah. Denver was such a big one for me too. But I remember coming out of that with so many significant things. It was probably the event where I think I fully started accepting that this was my journey. This is really what I was going to like throw myself into. To have that gift of your friendship afterwards, because we literally spent that summer sending each other voice messages, and some of them were beautifully inspired. Some of them were an example of evolution in process.
Yes.
But that that summer is just walking in my driveway and feeling a true connection with a true friend that I didn't know I had, and truly evolved to a sisterhood for me of just knowing that there's a heart that I share the space with. And
for me, if we true sisterhood when I was really having some struggles, and you were doing Go Loves for me, and you connected with my sister that passed away and was severely disabled. So we never really had that sisterly relationship like you would expect in 3D. And that's exactly what I did have with you years later. So now it's our segment to cry already, I think.
yes, I think so. I think so. Because now I have to say the same, because I had also a really challenging moment that summer. And it was Lorelei that stepped in and supported me in a way that I didn't know was possible, with helping me get into healing, but then supporting me in that healing. And then it really elevated this experience and this understanding of what love is.
It's so healing to have such a beautiful relationship with another human being. It allowed me to be the person I wished to be.
Yeah.
Because at times, if you don't have the opportunity, so to say, to show up for someone, you won't know that you can be like that. And so I felt also so grateful for the opportunity to elevate myself to a level where I could be a supportive friend and not just be caught up in my own BS.
Yes.
Which is what I was before.
Yeah, it's such a contrast, because it's not like we don't have friends that we support in our life, but
not so deeply though.
No, not so deeply, and not with such an intention to bring in source and to bring in this divine love that doesn't have agendas or a balancing sheet involved in it somehow. It's a program free, just pure love and desire to see each other shine. Yeah.
Feels like every time you overcome something, it feels like I've overcome it as well.
Yeah.
Then your elevated understanding and awareness and whatever else is involved in there elevates my own awareness and understand, because you show up differently and I then show up differently. So it's those metronomes, right? Even when it's hard, the fact that you're doing it kind of allows me to synchronize to you. So it's really beautiful. I think this is an example of how we're doing this podcast, because we just went straight in.
Yeah, pretty much. I think so.
The heart is the biggest question.
There it is.
I know.
Yeah. No, it's so true. I do need to, I want to like add a little bit to what you were saying too, because you have such a passion for deep dive learning. And I literally sometimes have the thought of, I don't know what information we're learning right now, but I know Lorelai's going to tell me soon. I'm going to get a good summary, a good podcast to listen to very soon.
That's so funny.
Yeah, I love it. So should we explore some of our questions, do you think?
Let's tell people what made us want to do this podcast.
Let's do that. Okay.
And I'll let you start because the start is yours.
Well, I think the start is, and really it's us. I think this podcast has literally been in the making for 2 years because, like I said earlier, Lorelai and I spent a summer literally just exchanging voice messages. It went beyond that summer, but I think that summer really set a foundation. I remember my kids just being like, "Who are you talking to?" "Oh, she's sending a message to Lorelai."
Same.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah.
Are you talking to Amanda?
Yes. Yeah. Suddenly your name is like a household name. Like this person they can't see, but you're there the whole time. We both are regular listeners to Dr. Joe Live and participate in so many things that we can online with inner science meditations and Give to Give. There are Zooms that they offer. And
we were part of the same authorized group.
Yeah.
That's how we met. This is why we met, so to say, because we were in the same authorized group. And that was a big part of it. We even ended up hosting at some point together.
Yeah, we were hosting together. Yeah, so much sharing space together. And then we did the abundance course together and just listening to the Q&As. I think that trigger moment of like putting everything together was listening to a question and hearing the vulnerability of this person and the question that she asked. And it struck me because I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I would feel really challenged to say this question online in front of everybody. But at the same time, my heart exploded with gratitude for her because she opened up, and now there's thousands of us that are listening and hearing this beautiful step in her evolution. And all we can see and hear is the gorgeousness of this moment. And then it was like, well, what if it all was a podcast?
That's amazing. Right. I think this really shows our evolution, that we could see the vulnerability in someone's struggle and be inspired to step into the struggle ourselves, because neither of us has ever done anything like this before. We don't have a desire for fame or anything like that, but this community is so important to us, and we have gained so much by being part of it, and we have such a strong desire to contribute to the community and to create a space in which we can get a little taste of what it's like to go to a retreat and meet someone new and see the example of how we can be as friends, as human beings, as members of a community by having practiced this work and having elevated our consciousness, really.
I'm sure that you'll agree with me that we are considering ourselves still students. We're not sitting here like, well, we've figured it out.
We are students. And I think what really allowed us to do this as well is the fact that we believe in the love of the community and their graciousness, understanding that we're just learning ourselves and we are in the unknown. So it won't be that bad even as we're learning.
So we hope that for our listeners that this experience is kind of like that amazing elevated conversation, the divine synchronistic one that you had at an event sometime where everything aligned and you just knew that this conversation was meant to be, and it was edifying and creation moment for you. And that's what we want to bring into these episodes, because we just feel this magic that happens with each other when we share.
And just before we dive into our questions, I think it's very important as well that we mention, like Amanda said, it was inspired by doing the abundance course. We hadn't even finished when she said, let's do a podcast. And I said, of course we should. Yeah.
I think I said this is a dumb idea, but
Yes,
somebody
yeah.
should make a podcast and then you said, yes, we should. And I was like, oh, good. You knew what I meant.
Yes. But that was us also trying to embody what we were learning. Dr. Joe talked a lot in the abundance course about the abundant person being someone that is not just a student, is a doer. So it doesn't just endlessly study something, but it puts it into practice. And this was us trying to put it into practice and utilizing what we've learned about goal setting and meditating to bring in 5D energy and being able to overcome roadblocks through the work. So I thought that was really important. We mentioned.
It is. Yeah. And I think even to the point where, he gave us a very specific process to follow in that course. And those of you that joined us in that course, I'm sure you know what we're talking about. It was amazing. So we literally took that process and we applied it to this podcast. And we've been watching that work itself out ever since.
And I'm still waiting to fill the survey question because I just want to put a link to the podcast. I want to say, what is your feedback? Well, we made a podcast.
Yeah, we did it.
We did it. This is how we utilize it.
I love that. I haven't filled out my form either because I'd look at it and I'm like, okay, I need another. But maybe that's it. That's probably exactly. Yeah. I love that. All right. Should we explore some of our questions
We're
now?
finally ready, guys.
Yeah, we got it. Maybe we'll see how far we get into it. So we like to start our podcast with asking our guests, a short story of how they got into Dr. Joe. You'll notice probably through the episodes that we tend to stick to some main questions, and the magic that comes out of these questions is really blowing our minds already. So, to begin, Lorelei, could you give us a quick story about your journey into Dr. Joe Dispenza's work and share what elements of Dr. Joe's model really spoke to you and intrigued you the most?
Oh, my story. I remember this moment so well. And it's kind of crazy because I was in a phase of my life where I was having some big struggles and I was really dissociating. That was my coping mechanism at the time. So I don't have a lot of memories, but this one was just for some reason so clear. I remember where I was and when it was and all of that. I was looking through my library app. I was looking for something new to read. And at some point, I had saved this book called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself because I thought that was a fun title. So at this moment of struggle, as I was looking through the favorites list, now the title really spoke to me. And I thought, oh my God, that is exactly my problem. It's really not trying to fix anything. It's really changing who I am because I'm sick of myself and I could use a million different techniques on the internet for for things you could do and protocols and Tony Robbins things and whatever other forms of change, but I'm still me. So that was the hook. And the element that spoke to me the most was the understanding that first, who we are is not etched in stone. That is a habit. And I have been breaking other habits before. So it gave me a lot of hope. That is not genetic, is not something you're sort of cursed with for life, like a lottery. You even have a good personality or a bad one, and that's just what it's going to be. And then the fact that there is a chemical component that gets thrown in there, and that is addictive. And so it explained to me why I could struggle beyond just having to utilize willpower of the brain, that there is just another component out there that is my body that has to get used to things as well. That was the door into the quantum for me. Now, how about you, Amanda? What was your introduction into the world and what intrigued you the most in his model?
Thanks for sharing, Lorelai. I was also really struggling. I was in, at the time, what I thought was the darkest night of my soul. The challenges that I was facing health wise had exhausted all of the Western methods that I knew of. I have a background in nursing. It had exhausted basically everything except for this idea of a power beyond myself. That's kind of how I'll put it. And coming from kind of a religious background, I really had a resistance to that concept because I had come out of that and for a specific reason, and I had been out of that for 20 plus years, but I was getting really desperate. So I was starting to get into what I thought was just new age kind of woo woo. I really wasn't happy with it, to be honest. I was scrolling on Instagram on some morning and feeling pretty low. And I always think this is funny, but an astrologer that I followed at the time on Instagram was at a Dr. Joe event.
No way.
Yeah. So she didn't even really say what she was doing. But all I remember is her being like, I'm getting up at 3 a.m. to meditate. Everybody should try a Dr. Joe event sometime. And she said the Dr. Joe Dispenza. And I was like, I've never heard of this name before, but 3 a.m. is an intense time to wake up. And I really love intense things. I just have always been drawn into that. So I immediately Googled him. And honestly, within 20 minutes of reading his story, after it probably took me 10 minutes to spell his name correctly. But once I got in, I read his story. I just knew that whatever this was, whatever the information he had, that was going to be a key. It was like a visceral feeling of a key unlocking a door for me. So I had Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself downloaded probably within 20 minutes of all of that on my phone and just started the journey right away. And honestly, all of the books have had the elements that I love the most. But when I first started, especially with Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, I had this sense of personal responsibility that I picked up. It was like, you are responsible for your life. The life you're living right now, you created it. And not in just this untangible sense, but like, here is the reasons why you created it. Here is the chemical process. Here is the behavior process. And it was so clear. And I felt this sense of relief because it was like, if I was responsible for this, then that means I can take responsibility and change it. I just have to figure out how I'm going to do that. So that was the first thing for me that was a huge relief. And then all of the science behind it, just the method. And I did a lot of change games in that first year, just walking around my house, change. That was the big step in.
That's so cool that we both started with the same book.
Yeah.
Because I actually thought you started with another book. You always mention becoming supernatural. So I was under the impression that you started with that or the placebo. So that's great. We're still learning about each other. That's amazing after thousands of hours of conversation.
Yep.
About the work.
That's funny.
Very cool. And I do wonder, because myself too, I had been doing meditations for many years. I'm not a new age person. I was doing a lot of Tony Robbins, things of that kind. Abraham Hicks I was aware of. But somehow Dr. Joe didn't get thrown into this bloody mix by the YouTube people or whomever. And to be fair, I was not on Instagram or Facebook or any of these things, but I was on YouTube a lot. And the fact that that algorithm never put Dr. Joe Dispenza with any of the other transformational change people is really crazy. I wonder why.
It's interesting. It reminds me of when the student is ready, the teacher will come kind of feeling, because it felt that way for me too. Like,
yes,
I had been exploring Marianne Williams a lot, and I had been very careful and selective with who I was listening to. At that time, Abraham Hicks was too much for me. Like I couldn't do this concept of channeling. And yeah, it is kind of surprising. Like, how did I not hear about him before?
Because I think I would have been ready before as well. Because it just
Yeah.
spoke to me so intensely right away.
Yeah.
And it was just so on point, the fact that, like you were saying,
Mm-hmm.
there is a science behind it. There is something you can understand. You don't just have to believe. You can understand it.
Yeah.
It doesn't require this blind faith. You can try it out.
This is true. And because I've contemplated this too. I know I've had this conversation with other people. Like, what if you heard about him before? Would you have received it? And I know for sure I would have. Even in my 20s, I would have been like, and I think he was around
Oh, yeah, he was
2008.
around. And
Yeah.
in my 20s is when I discovered Marianne Williams and all of that. So I would have for sure discovered him as well. So let's put it out there that the algorithms change a little bit and allow more people to just be aware. And
Yeah.
it's up to them what they do next. But this is, I think, a great segue into our next question, because so much has changed since those early days, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you were to take a snapshot of how you feel about your life and yourself in this moment, what would it look like?
This is a good question. My heart just like burst open with that question. So, like, so many words right now. If I was going to take a snapshot and describe this picture, it would be this woman with her heart feeling and being probably 10 times the size of her body. And expansive is the word that is ringing through my body right now, because it just feels like this bubbling and continuing to grow and expand energy right now, just bursting from my heart. So it feels so creative. It feels so alive, and it feels like fun. Like everything feels like a play, like I'm just playing. And on top of all of that is this immense, it's like in it, it's this gratitude. Gratitude for everything, for Dr. Joe, for my willingness to work, for Lorelei, for all of the people that have contributed to this moment, and even the people that I haven't met yet. It's like this sense of just gratitude for the willingness to come into this space, for the willingness to go through the journey and the valleys, and then celebrate the peaks, and then be in this moment where realizing that it's all this coming into a beautiful symphony of life. And yeah, that's how I have to say it. It's just like a symphony.
That is so beautiful. A symphony. And it's so beautiful because I was thinking, what does my life feel like for me? And it was also musical. I was thinking there's this NPR show called Morning Becomes Eclectic. And that's how I feel about my life. Like, it's eclectic. And I love the title Morning Becomes Eclectic, because morning is just something happens every day. And it's usually associated with, rushing about, getting everybody ready, school runs and whatnot. And for a space so mundane to become eclectic, it's magical. And that's how I feel about my life. I'm doing a lot of things, a lot of practical things, kids, jobs. But then I have all these projects like the podcast and other things. And it feels like my life becomes eclectic every morning. And I love it so much. And I also feel, beyond what Amanda was saying as well, I feel a lot of heart expansion, and I feel a lot of gratitude. I also feel a lot of tenderness towards myself, which I hadn't felt before. Before, I was always just running behind myself with a stick and dangling a carrot I could never reach to in front of me. And that's how I was pushing myself through life. And now I just feel a lot of tenderness to myself, and I feel proud of my struggles and how I keep going. And that is such a gift and such a change from from how I used to live, and all these bursts of love that I randomly get every day for all sorts of reasons, like the most random reasons.
Yes, I love that too. You're just kind of going through a random checkout line. You're like, holy cow, I just fell in love with this person.
Or this concept, what this work revealed to me a lot was how much I am connecting with the big concepts of life. The human connection, for example. When I contemplate that, it just takes me to a very deep place. Or when I contemplate a very big subject of life, such as literally the future of humanity. I know it sounds kind of crazy, but I do think a lot about the future of humanity. I feel this really big bursting in my heart, like this is why I'm here for, so I can explore things. And I am involved in things that are possibly changing how we interact, changing the world a little bit. And that just makes me, I feel the same about that as I feel about motherhood, for example, which again, I think it's a very big subject. And I think about motherhood, not just about my children, but motherhood as a big subject. And I never allowed myself to really sink into the love I have for big subjects, humanity. I was always thinking, well, who are you? Like, who are you to really sit there and feel joy and feel your heart burst with the possibility of changing the world? Like, come on.
I love that. And I connect with that a lot too, because prior to this work, I spent a lot of time thinking about the future of the world too. I still do, but in a very different way. I would just be so wrapped up in what I thought needed to be changed. In fact, my bachelor's degree is in social science. I had this whole identity into a human nature concept, how, and in a very negative context, because that's kind of where that framework comes from. It was like this kind of idea of like, as humans here, are we animals that just are scrounging around, or are we more? And now I have such a joy and such a love for humans and for us and for where we're going and what we're changing and how we're loving each other. And even in interactions with people that are, and I'm taking this beyond Dr. Joe's community, because Dr. Joe's community is amazing. It's just this like bubble of love. You can't help but get excited about all things love and joy and what that means. But I think now it's so strong and it's imprinted in my DNA that I can see that in everything that I do and every person I talk to. And I love that because I think about that too. And as you were talking, I was like, that's motherhood, right? We can't help but say, okay, we brought these humans here. Let's make it good. Let's do great, you guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we have another question I'm going to jump into, which is, what were some surprising things you've learned about the world or yourself from meditation? It's interesting that the most surprising things I've learned about myself from meditation were the things I already knew about myself. For example, my love of big things, but I just never allowed myself to know it. It just always seemed like a fantasy. But for example, I work in finance and business. And when I was asked what I wanted to do with my life, when I was 7 or 8, so I was very, for some reason, drawn to politics. And I wanted to make laws because politicians could do that. And then I realized that wasn't going the right way. And then I said, okay, I'm going to enforce the law. And I wanted to be a lawyer, but you needed too much money for that. So I said, okay, no, not that one. And then I had a brief moment when I was going to go into the military.
I was wondering if the military came in
Oh,
to
yeah,
play
yeah.
that point.
14, I was full of rage. So it seemed like a good place to go. And then I decided to go into finance and business because as I was growing, I thought, okay, the thing that really changes the world is money. Like, forget about politicians, forget about lawyers, it's just money. So I got into it, but I just never knew what to do with it further, because my energy was, well, I'm this small, broken person. But my soul was, but you love big things and you want to be involved in big things. But I'm this small, broken person that I can barely manage with just doing very mundane things. But blah, 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 blah. So meditation really showed me how to be myself.
Oh, that is so well put. And I feel like you just kind of like put some pieces together for me, because I can totally see that. Because for myself, I've always had this just desire to take care of and love people. I remember thinking like, this is too simple. I remember as a kid, there was an exercise in school. I think I was like 13 or 14, where we all had like a piece of paper taped on the back of our back, and everybody had to write something, some quality about that person. And I got mine, and I think the word nice had been written on there like more than any other word. And I remember having this moment of, nice is so boring. Nobody likes nice. That's not exciting. But that was my heart. That was my soul. It was just this idea of, I love humans. I love people feeling comfortable with me. All of my career decisions have always been in line with this idea of like customer service or nursing eventually, where I was just kind of always taking care of somebody. And then as I went along, though, I definitely developed this program of one, oh, that's kind of small and boring. But two, that I'm not enough. I don't have enough love for everybody. I'm getting overwhelmed. I'm getting depleted. I can't love everybody. And this will go to that moment, my first retreat in Niagara Falls, when we first had the coherence healings. And I was nervous about this idea of focusing energy together as a group. That really was a challenge for me. And I remember surrendering into that and getting overwhelmed with this sense of love and this sense of worthiness and the understanding. I'm going to start crying now. Of how unlimited it was. It was kind of like I didn't know, I couldn't feel the vastness of it yet, but I knew it was unlimited. And I remember falling in love with this person, the Healy, and all of the people in my group. And just the first thought I had was like, are we even allowed to feel this way? Like, are we even allowed this level of worthiness? And then being just so in awe of like how it was so endless and it was effortless. And then it was regenerating me at the same time. And that's when it started to sink in that it wasn't so much a small idea to love the world. It really wasn't a small idea. And it wasn't an impossible idea either. It's entirely possible to walk around with so much love in your heart that you see each person as a gorgeous reflection of all of our divine essence together, no matter how that person is acting towards you or whatever the reaction is. Like, it's entirely possible. Is it easy? No, that's a different story. But it's possible. And so that was the surprise. Again, similar to like what you were saying, it was really understanding myself and understanding this is what I wanted all along. I always wanted this endless flow of just love and care and nice.
That is so amazing that you had that experience, because I had the same experience at the same retreat, but I hadn't met you yet. And it's so beautiful to think that all 1,800 people that went there possibly had the same experience, I hope. I remember so clearly when we were walking around, because we did the healer's walk around the building. as we were getting ready to enter the rooms for the coherence healings. It was 2022, I think, in September. As I remember, we were a big group outside, and there were quite a few police cars that were parked around there, and they were directing, making sure that we were safe. And I remember opening my eyes as we were standing there doing the healers walk. You start with standing with your eyes closed, and then you open your eyes and you walk. And I opened my eyes and I see the police cars. And I had such a big moment again for humanity, because for the past few years, in the US at least, we had a lot of issues with police brutality and police not protecting as much as attacking. And to be this big group of people that is going in to love strangers without taking pictures of it and posting it and asking for likes and subscribes and all of those things. And then for the authorities to be there to facilitate us to do that and protect us and serve and protect, as it says on their cars. It just was a very, very healing moment for me that I didn't know I needed coming out of the pandemic.
That's true. It was a very poignant moment. And I remember that too, because that time a police car or a police force was not a fun image on our screens for a while, especially during that time. But yeah, that walk was amazing. And gosh, so much came out of that.
It did. And so that for me really changed how I was applying the work when I came back from Niagara Falls.
Mm.
I wonder if you could tell us, Amanda, since one of the major themes of this podcast is how we do the work, if you can share us what the work means to you and how do you apply it in your everyday life?
That's so true. That event changed how I did the work too a lot. I was in the work for 2 years prior to doing my first event. It was quite a journey for me to get to the idea that I needed to go to an event, or I should go to an event. I'll say I definitely needed to go to an event. I always like to share that I had this amazing week at that first event where I came up against myself. I had no idea. I went from like being in the very back row with a hoodie on and not wanting to talk to anybody to like dancing and kind of just
social butterfly.
Yeah, major social butterfly. All of a sudden. Yeah. And I remember walking out of there. I had this idea of going to the event. I was like, I'm going to have this experience. I had watched all of the stories and I'm going to have this crazy out of body experience. I'm going to have this and blah, blah, blah. And I'm not saying that didn't happen. I had an amazing time. But the thing that I walked out of there, the first thing I did was I went and apologized to my husband, because I was so aware of all the resentment that I had been holding against him. And I just knew, I was like, the first thing I have to do is I have to release that. So for me at that time, that was how I did that. That was my first step. And I just remember him looking at me and really not knowing what to do with that. Like really just being like, okay.
That's most husbands.
Yeah.
Their wife just suddenly comes and apologizes for the last decade. They would just be a little stunned.
Yeah, it was a very like, no, I'm so sorry. And he was like, okay, how about we get the kids in the van, you know? But I like it. That just set the course for me. So then it was this, okay, nitty gritty. And I felt like I'd been doing nitty gritty work already, but I know we're going to do a deep dive because I really need to change. Like really need to change. I really need to become that person without any past ticks on her timeline and no future ticks on her future line, you know?
Isn't it crazy that we've been doing this work now for quite a few years, and I feel more than in the beginning that I need to do more of the work. I never feel that, oh,